nobody better to talk about the real John McCain than the author of the real John McCain. And of course, I'm talking about you, Cliff Schecter, the author
Yes.
of the real John McCain.
One of the few people dumb enough to bury themselves in notes and research and interviews about John McCain over the course of a year. And I think I'm still scarred a little bit mentally from it.
Has there ever been I mean, I guess Bob Dole, when he lost in '96, he still had some relevance, but it wasn't. I think I don't. Has anybody lost the Well, I guess Joe Biden, but no. Has anybody lost the presidency and then still retained as much relevance in the eyes of the press as John McCain has?
Not in the modern era. No, I mean, there are guys that lost the presidency, and even in landslides, and eventually, and they ran, either they were still in the Senate or ran for their Senate seats and came back, like McGovern and Goldwater, who are still even a part of the conversation. But this guy lost in a landslide, and it just speaks to the enduring power of building that beautiful, I am a nonpartisan, independent thinking, centrist brand in Washington, D.C. Because the dude not only stepped completely away from everything he claimed to stand for, and showed himself for the partisan hack that he was, but got smoked in that election, and yet he still has a warm seat for him on Meet the Press or Face the Nation really anytime he wants. He was completely wrong about the Iraq War and most other things, but deadly wrong about the Iraq War. And I'll just reiterate, I put this up on my Facebook page the other day, I think I tweeted it out, which was the conclusion that I wrote in The Real McCain, and I think it's a pretty easy conclusion to come to. I predicted he'd behave like this if he lost, which he has now for the entire term, which is, or Obama's entire first term and now into the second term, which is John McCain is somebody who literally is completely controlled by his anger and bitterness. That's all he is. So he doesn't legislate based on anything, but for the most part, I mean, there's a little exceptions where he does stuff because he can get press love out of it, but for the most part, has legislated by who he's angry at. And you can look, when after that 2000 election, when he was mad at President Bush, he didn't sign on to suddenly to close the gun show loophole and to oppose President Bush's tax cut and to stand up with Teddy Kennedy and argue for a patient's Bill of Rights because he actually gave a crap about any of that stuff. He did it because he hated Bush.
Right.
He was trying to go after Bush, and he kept doing that all the way through 2004 to the point where he determined, maybe I could be president and run again in 2008, and I'm going to need the Bush people's help, and decided that and then he went far to the right. I mean, literally, there was a point in time there, I used to have this analysis in front of me, and I don't now, where he was either the second or third most, and I put this word in quotes, liberal Republican during like that first term.
Yep.
And then he was something like the third or fourth most conservative during the second Bush term.
And
no one had made the transformation this guy made, and he did it all because of his interest. And I'll just, the last thing quickly, I know you want to jump in, and the way you've seen him personally go after Obama and turn it into a grudge match and be bitter is because, again, this is who he is. He's never forgiven Obama for beating the great John McCain. He can't handle it. He's never lived up to the legacy of his father and grandfather, who were famous admirals and were actually very well respected in the military for what they accomplished. And so he still sort of hates Obama for robbing him of his legacy. And
now,
that's where a lot of this comes from.
It seems to me this whole Benghazi thing with John McCain is all about him saying there is a vacuum of leadership in the Republican Party right now, and I am now going to go back to being the titular head of the Republican Party. Now that we're past the election. So he comes out, he says, he starts saying all sorts of talking smack about Susan Rice, our ambassador to the United Nations. He is convinced there is some type of massive Benghazi scandal, Benghazi gate that's going on. And so in all, this is fantastic. I think people are aware of this. So the other day, there is a hearing, there's testimony on Benghazi, talking to, I don't know exactly which one he didn't go to, if it was one with Petraeus in there, but it was a big deal, particularly if you're trying to push that there's some type of Benghazi gate, and he skips it. He doesn't even go to it. And so he is asked, we have the audio, he is asked by CNN, Why didn't you go to it? The audio's not great, but he loses it. And I wanted you, Cliff, to listen to this and comment on this audio because, of course, you wrote The Real McCain. Here is the audio. John McCain really showing his crusty old man side and just the entitlement here. I can crap all over. I can say that there's a huge Benghazi scandal, but go to the hearing on Benghazi? Why would I do that?
He's too busy going on TV.
To investigate it all. Well, our Ted Barrett caught up with the senator earlier today and wanted to know why he didn't go to that briefing. And to say the least, it did not go well. Listen to what happened.
Why can't you comment? Because I have the right as a senator to have no comment. And who the hell are you to tell me where I can or not?
I'm a reporter. I'm asking you a question.
And I'm giving you an answer for the 10th time.
Who the hell are you to tell me that I'm a senator?
I know.
Who are you telling me I have to go to the Benghazi?
Wait. Little whiny voiced. That's classic McCain. I mean, because again, he's so privileged. How dare you ask him? That's the guy that called his wife the four-letter word. That's the guy that assaulted and physically jumped on a congressman after he was mocking him, and has pretty much told half of his own caucus to go F themselves to the point where everybody hates him.
Now, so let me ask you this, though. I just don't understand how the guy thinks he can get away with this. And do you think, and I feel like there's been other times, but do you think this is the beginning of the end of people's love affair with John McCain? Because look, can he possibly have any more relevance? I mean, nobody really trusts him in the Republican Party. I just don't understand, and he is chasing after this stuff just to get into the limelight. I mean, honestly, this Benghazi...
It's disgraceful is what it is.
Do you think the press is still going to shower this guy with affection?
I do, because, it's sort of looking at... Look, I mean, he was so wrong about Iraq, and it had such deadly consequences. Where was his big calling for an investigation of that? Where was his making sure they went beyond, not that there weren't investigations, we all know what went on under the Bush administration and a Republican Senate. Where was where was John McCain pushing to the ends of the earth to find out what went on with those WMD that were never there? Where was John McCain pushing when, 4 people, and it was tragic, were killed in Benghazi, including a U.S. ambassador? What about 3,000 people that were killed, on September 11th? And as it's come out in what's his name, Kurt, I can't think of his last name, his book, the number of warnings that these guys had that we didn't even previously know about, probably 40 different warnings at different times, making it very clear that something was coming, and some of them even had some of the information as guys are going to flight schools quite openly and trying to learn how to fly planes, but not land them or take them off, just steer them. Where was the investigation of that? Where's the investigation of Condoleezza Rice and the fact that he and little Lindsey Graham supported Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State? Remember, she of the mushroom cloud, she of talking about how, much like Mitt Romney, and these guys never change, it's funny, how Russia would be our number one concern back in 2000, 2001, and terrorism wasn't something that they set our hair on fire and worry about as these guys were planning to attack us and murder Americans. If there was anybody who should have been disqualified by their idiocy from ever moving on from the position that she held and should have been run out of government, it should have been Condoleezza Rice. And it certainly should have been the Bush administration. But there was no John McCain there screaming and yelling about that. That was okay. I think
this is just because he's pissed that he's not going to be defense secretary. I honestly believe he's
you're right. Everything is about him. It always is.
I mean, this is like classic. This is the stuff I deal with my 7-year-old daughter. It's like I think he's like I'm not going to be defense secretary, so no one is going to be defense secretary. No one. And
God forbid, an African American woman be defense secretary who potentially instead of him. Although I think they're talking more about Susan Rice for Secretary of State, but still, nonetheless, there's always been. I mean, the guy's 112 years old, and some of the things he said were beyond borderline racist. I think there's race in this. I mean, let's ask ourselves questions. Why is it that all the people that always get so viciously attacked in the Obama administration are African American? You ever wonder that one?
Well, that's because they're
Barack Obama, Shirley Sherrod, Van Jones, Eric Holder. I mean, there's certainly reasons I haven't liked President Obama and Eric Holder, but they've generally had to do with policy, haven't they?
Right.
I can say they always have. I mean, why is it? Why is it always the African American members who are being attacked like that?
Well,
I think.
to be fair, Cass Sunstein, I think, was on Glenn Beck's board for a while.
Okay, I'm just saying, and it's not to say there never was anybody, but I think we'd be blind to not think that there's some race in this, that there's some sexism in this.
I think for McCain, I think it's just his petulance, and I'm going to credit him with having this sense of propriety and this petulance, regardless of the race of the person.